So we've got two farmers, two monitor farmers in fact. We've got Brian Barker from Stowmarket Monitor Farmer, and Russ McKenzie from the Huntingdon area, Huntingdon Monitor Farm. And they'll both come up here now and explain exactly what they've done with this £20 note, and hopefully you'll be able to digest some of their thoughts, and we'll have a bit of a discussion afterwards. So if you've got questions about what Brian and Russ have done, if you've got comments, then please come up and ask it. The value is what the questions are coming from you guys. It's that free and open discussion where you might wholeheartedly disagree, and we can debate that point as well. So I'd like to first of all invite Brian up to explain what he's done with 20 quid when he gets switched on. £20, only £20. You can't have any more than that. Okay, take it away, Brian.
Hello everyone. As Harry said, I'm a monitor farmer from Stowmarket. We're a family-owned partnership, growing predominantly cereals, with a very long rotation with grass seed integral in the middle of it. So our actual rotation is 12 years, right from cycle to cycle. So we're trying to use traditional methods, but then again using what we've got out there in the modern farming world to basically put our business in the best place forward going towards 2020. And so when this idea of this debate was given to me as a question, what would I spend £20 on? I was like, well, the easiest thing would be a bottle of gin, but a good bottle of gin won't buy you much at the moment for 30 quid, so I would get half a bottle of gin. And then I thought, well, how else can I do it? And my best idea was actually putting it in my pocket and thinking about it. And that's when the whole idea came about of what could I spend this £20 on. Someone very wise once said to me that your best investment in your farm business is your own knowledge. And I'm a great believer in that, and if you can actually learn more yourself for free, then your actual business is going to be in a better position. I also believe that if you don't measure it, you can't change it. And so that's what I've done this year, and it all came about last year at my Monitor Farm Open Day. We're standing in my middle of my yen plot, and some old boy walked over to me with a bit of straw in his mouth, and he said, "What do you think this is going to do? How much wheat do you think you're going to get off here?" And I said, well, at the moment I just want my farm average, which is about 5-year farm average, is about 9.5 tonnes. So if I can get above that, I'm doing okay. And in the back of my thought, I said, in the back of my mind, I thought, actually I should be knowing exactly what I'm getting from each field. I should know it, and I should be monitoring it throughout. Throughout the Monitor Farm programme, we've been doing benchmarking of our businesses, and so that's the idea that I came up with 12 months ago, was to actually benchmark all my winter wheat crops across my whole farm. So I said, well, how am I going to do that? And so one day I was flicking through the very well placed AHDB growth guide, which is available inside at no cost and is absolutely free. And in here there is actually a winter wheat crop which has been benchmarked. So all the way through the year it says how many plants per square metre, how many tillers, how many ears, how many grains per ear site, and all this sort of stuff. So I thought, well, actually that's pretty much set my benchmark. So I'm going to judge all my winter wheat crops against the benchmark crop in here. So I said, right, I'm challenging myself to go and do it. And so I asked my farm employee Nick to create a quadrant, and this was absolutely free. It came from scrap metal in our farm workshop, and it's a 50 centimetre by 50 centimetre quadrant. And I challenged myself to go out at different times throughout the year and actually count what was going on in my field. It gave me the discipline to go into every single field, instead of just pulling up in the farm gateway looking, oh, it's green over there, that's fine. It actually challenged me to actually see in detail what was going on in every single field. And so I've done this for all my winter wheat crops, and I've actually thrown this quadrant 890 times in the last 12 months. It's been quite tedious. So one thing I probably would spend my £20 on in hindsight is a set of knee pads, because when you're actually kneading and trying to count exact number of plants per row, it does get quite tedious. But I've done it, and I've found some really interesting stuff. So I've been noting down what I've sort of found throughout the year. So this is what I've personally found across my 25 fields of wheat. When I started off, I actually estimated that my normal field loss, I was putting 15% extra seeds into my fields, thinking that's what was going to sort of die off during establishment. When I actually did my establishment counts, I actually worked out that I'd actually lost 25% of the seed that I'd actually planted. So that's already given me one question to change next year. Should I be upping my seed rates? I then looked at the varieties, different varieties. Leeds flew out the ground, it absolutely romped away. It produced 110% of the actual target population that went into it. I then had Zulu. Zulu was hanging on, it didn't really get itself going, so there's two questions that I've already got for my varieties. Then I said, right, well, when's the next time? So winter went through and I said, well, what's our overwinter losses? So what's actually died through the winter? I then did another set of counts. I went out to every single field, through my quadrant 4 or 5 times in the different fields, and I found that another 7% of my plant population had actually died. On the top of that, where I'd actually placed fertiliser underneath it, only 4% had died. So there's another question I'd been asked. I then went out when the crop had started to develop, when the actual shoots were being produced, and I found that my wheat crop had an average of 892 shoots per square metre. It ranged from 1,085 in the real thick crops, all the way down to 513 in my weakest. And from this, I was using the calculations in the growth guide to give me a theoretical yield. So my high wheats were actually producing at about 13.2 tonnes per hectare when actually calculated up, and my very worst were dipping down to about 8.2 tonnes per hectare. So I've got a big 4 or 5 tonne variance across my whole wheat crop. So then I actually started thinking, well, with my agronomist, can I go in there and actually get my worst crops up a bit further? Should I be using biostimulants? Should I be putting more fertiliser in there? And then I was actually saying, well, actually, has my top yielding crops actually got enough nutrients to fulfill that yield predicted? So that's what I've been doing. It hasn't cost me very much money, it's just my own time, but I've been out there learning. I've also done the soil pants, which is on the thing, which is a completely different thing, but I've actually had to go out and do that as well. I've also been doing another thing which I created off the back of the Monitor Farm programme, a yield club. So I've got 10 farmers who are all local to me, and they've done exactly what I've done over all my crops. And so we're now benchmarking our winter wheat crops between each other. We're then taking biomass cuts throughout the year, and we're actually doing the calculations of what's the nutrition's in these biomass cuts. And so we're actually got a discussion group off the back of the Monitor Farm programme of like-minded farmers who want to see what we can do and what we can deliver and what we can change next year. So that's something else that's come from this. So all in all, what has that done to me? Why have I done it? Well, it's my own knowledge. I'm trying to get better at what I'm actually doing. Off the back of it, I've actually reduced my fertiliser spend. I actually spent £2,500 less in fertiliser because I wasn't just chucking fertiliser on the standards. I was actually using the actual predicted yield to actually calculate how much nitrogen, how much sulphur was actually required by that plant. So I've actually reduced my fertiliser spend, so I've actually gained £2,500 to spend elsewhere. There's loads of things that have come out of it. K, seed rates, there's all sorts. How can I get higher tiller to ear conversions? It's also being done with incorporation with yen. I'm actually entered both my fields into yen, so I'm also getting lots of detail out of that. So in hindsight, what would I spend £20 on? I would spend it on farm knowledge, knowing it yourself, getting your employees to understand what you're trying to do. Can you get the little marginal gains across your farm? And that's where it comes down to, but you can't change anything if you don't measure it. And so that's why I'd say a free quadrant made in your farm workshop can change your management and your thinking considerably. So that's what I'd do. And then if I had still had the £20, then probably 10 lottery tickets and a pair of knee pads just to make sure your knees aren't hurting at the end of the day. So that's what I would do with my £20. And so I'll hand back to Harry.
Okay, I don't have a microphone, but I can shout. Okay, so you've just got an illustration there of what £20 can do and how far it can go. So keep it in mind, but we've got another way of spending £20. It's perhaps more interesting, shall we say. So I'd like to introduce Russ. No, I won't, we'll keep on going. So once Russ is ready, then he'll elaborate on more soil health, and it's fair to say that Brexit and the whole hoo-ha around it will come and go. We were farming 50 years ago. We'll be farming in 50 years' time. There's no doubt about it. So one of the most important things that Brian's alluded to is your mindset. The second, most likely, that we hear time and time again at the Monitor Farm conference and meeting is soil health. and it's the very thing that's under your feet. If you look after that, then it's going to start looking after you, is the thing I can say. Are we ready, Brian? Russ? Okay. Russ is a Huntington Monitor farmer, and he's going to explain. You probably noticed the washing line there with some funny looking underwear on it. Russ will come on and explain all about that. Over to you, Russ.
Thanks, Harry. They are not my pants on that washing line, I hasten to add. But the humble £20 notes, what can you do with 20 quid? Well, Brian's already alluded to it. You could buy 10 euro videos tickets, which would be pretty good if you could guarantee a win.
Working? That's better. 10 euro millions tickets. My wife keeps trying every week. We've still not won, unfortunately. You could probably buy a round of drinks for 5.5 people in my local pub. Probably not in London. But you can't buy a cereals ticket with it because that's £24. So there's something there for the organisers. Perhaps they could reduce their rates a little bit. But alternatively, what you could do is you could go to the supermarket and you could buy 4 pairs of 100% cotton boxer shorts for £9.99. And there's even change left for a spade. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering, why on earth are we talking about pants and spades? Well, at the end of the day, you cannot escape all the talk about soil health. Even DEFRA have got an agenda on it now, soil degradation. Soils and soil conditions have suddenly become really quite sexy and a hot topic. So I guess really it's looking about what we've done on farm over the period of time. We've moved from a deep cultivation system to a shallow cultivation system, looking to go towards no-till. But I guess the difficult thing is, how do you assess what's going on in your soil there? You know, what's going on, what's it telling you? You know, yield performance is one thing, but what's going on underneath your feet is the key thing as much as anything as well. And so the good thing about a spade, and I was quite surprised. I was asked to look at a farm a couple of years ago as part of a contract farming agreement, and of all the people that went there, I was the only person that took a spade with me to have a look at the soil condition. How do you know what the soil looks like if you don't take a spade? It's what's going on underneath is the key thing. So you can see we've got a compacted layer. You can see what the roots are telling you. I've got a couple of Australian friends in the audience here, so I think if your roots are heading towards Europe laterally, that's not what we want to be seeing. If they go down to Australia, you know you've got your soil in a pretty good condition, hopefully. So that's the key bit. But the whole pants thing, where does the idea come from? Well, it originated from Canada. What the guys wanted to do there is they wanted to highlight how important soil health was and soil condition, but they wanted to make it a bit more visual, a bit more fun, and a bit more appealing to the public. So the process goes is that you take your 100% cotton, 95% isn't good enough. Take your 100% cotton pants, you bury them for 8 weeks, and the idea being is it should give you an indication of how good your soil health is. So 100% cotton pants are like your steak and chips to soil biology. If you've got good microbial biology going on, they should degrade over that period of time. And so we chose to do this last autumn. We had the chance to do it on 2 different farms. One where we've been no-till for 3 years, having come out of a reduced tillage system, and another one where it's had a period of intensive cultivation to the same depth, straw removal continued for 20 years, and my wonderful assistant Tim will now bring over these results. It's like a lucky dip, this one, really. So you've got the pictures up there, you've got the washing line. These are sort of live pants. So hasten to add, these were brand new when we put them up. But this is from the field that's had this history of straw removal and intensive cultivations, and despite being slightly off colour, they were white when they started, you have not degraded at all. So what that is probably telling me, that there is not a lot of life going on in that soil over there. It's pretty dead, been probably abused over the years. And I was slightly nervous when we did it, is whether we were actually going to see any difference compared to where we've done our system. And so I present the holier than thou underpants in comparison. So this has been one that's been in the no-till for 3 years. You can see, well, you know, pictures say 1,000 words, holy pants say an awful lot more. So it gave me confidence in that what we do, we've got some good life going on our soils there. So worms tell you a good story. You know, the better the worms get, the channels come in the soil, so they help with water infiltration. As your organic matter increases as well, it helps you retain nutrients, hold on to water and moisture in a dry season. I know in this country we often talk about being wet, but there are times when it's been dry. We've had this spring at times where it's got progressively drier. And it helps me understand a bit what was going on within our soils. And we spoke about compaction, and that's a great thing about using a spade as well. And I guess really the whole thing is that you start to understand that as your soil biology builds up, the residues start to break down a bit quicker as well, as we're able to retain straw to help try and help build these levels. And we started introducing cover crops last year as well, as a way of trying to boost our soil biology. What we found with that is that they are opening up the soil profile. We're doing less with cultivations. and the recover crops are working. But I guess the key message here, and why we were trying to look at our soils more closely, is actually sometimes you have to understand what the condition of soil is in underneath. So, is it ready to go into no-till? Do we still have to do some remedial action? We've got 2 of the 5 farms are in no-till, the other 3 aren't quite ready yet, and that's because we've still got some work to do on soil conditions. So I guess that's the thing. The great thing about no-till is that it'll work properly. At the end of the day, there's a lot of cost saving to be had by going down towards the no-tillage system, but that's the byproduct, it's the bonus from going down that route in the first place. But if the soil isn't in the right condition, it can really bite you in the backside. So I guess that's the key thing for us in how we do that. And if you're building up this big sort of population of worms and microbiology, sometimes cultivation can be a bit like an earthquake going through and disrupting all the channels that they've created. And it almost puts it in a state of chaos. And it's the slightly ironic thing about cultivations is that we pull soils back up and put them back down again to try and get back into the state they were in originally. So I guess it's a question of what's right and what's wrong sometimes in those situations. And I guess the other thing as well is, as machinery has got bigger compared to where it would have been, say, 40, 50 years ago, have we got more removed from our soils? Not just in a physical sense, but physically on tractors as well. Tractors are bigger, it's a long way up those steps to get to a cab now. You think about the days, the old Massey Ferguson TE20s and that stuff, and you'd be a lot closer to the ground was what was going on. So I guess that's the thing actually, is I think a lot more people are interested in getting reconnected with what's happening in soils. And I liken it a little bit to the Brits going abroad. And I think it's from Jim Telfer. The first thing they look for when they go abroad is an English pub that serves a Sunday roast, that has the football on the television. And there's a degree of that in some ways about how we look at our soils, is that, why change? Well, we've always done it that way. Or perhaps sometimes there is a momentum going on that we do need to look more closely at what we're doing on the soils. And for me, it's more now what I call DIY soils, do it yourself. Yes, you can pay someone to come out and have a look at you and tell you how wonderful or how not so wonderful your soils are. But for a brief spend with a spade and some reasonably priced underpants, you can really understand what's going on with your soils, and ultimately are we soil movers or soil improvers. Thank you.
We're in there? Yeah, we're on. Okay, so you've heard the second way of spending 20 quid. And again, it puts a lot of effort back onto you guys, and a lot of effort into having a look at your soil type and on your soil condition. And if you just go out with a spade, then that's something. If you don't take any undies with you, you've gone out with a spade, then that's a very, very important thing to do. What we're going to do now is get both Brian and Russ up on the plinth and ask you for comments, questions. Has it worked as well as they'd hoped? Has it bombed? What do you think? What questions and comments would you have? And let's see, over to you guys where we can get. We have a roving mic somewhere. There's Richard with a roving mic. So over to you guys. If you've got any questions or comments, we'll invite you to back up onto the stage.
Russell, your pants. Do you think you're going to use those to monitor how you're going to move from conventional cultivations through to your end goal of no-till?
Yeah, I think we.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we are. We've got. Well, you mentioned we've got some in the ground again at the moment. So again, looking at where we've gone through different processes, just to see where we've got to with stuff really, and it's great. It's a bit of fun. It's very visual, but it's a.
Closer. Is that better? Right. Okay. Yes, it is a bit of fun. It's very visual, but it does help us understand if we've got good, soil biology. Does it equate to yield? I don't know. I think hopefully it's allowing us to probably understand a bit more about using our resources a bit better than we can do. But it's an easy way of gauging very quickly on what's going on in the soil. So yeah, we will be continuing with it.
But would you use it? I mean, when you're making those decisions to go from, I mean, you alluded to the fact you were going from conventional to min-till to no-till, and I know you've got heavy land. So at what points are you sort of deciding your soil's ready to move from one step to another?
I guess it's one of those things. Sometimes you can jump straight away. When you go and have a look, is the soil friable? Is the soil capping on the surface too easy? What's the condition of the subsoil in? Some of those fields are a lot of the time with compaction. It's usually a fault of management, something that's happened in the past. So, going out and having a look. We've seen before with Philip Wright who's come out that finely compacted layer in January is probably the best way. You can see where that water bursts out sometimes, and you can look and say, well, actually we're going to have to subsoil it that autumn. Going out in August when the soil's rock hard and finally can't get the spade in, deciding its compaction is probably not the best thing, but looking at the right time of year is the key bit. So a lot of that is coming down to what condition the soil's in underneath for us, will it allow us to go down that route.
I wonder if you could just enlighten us, when we're trying to move from a deep cultivation system onto minimum cultivations or even zero cultivations, and you're incorporating cover crops all to improve your soil structure, what's your strategy with dealing with slugs?
I did learn that slugs aren't exclusive to my farm in East Anglia. We have grazed cover crops. We find we get less of an issue with slugs there as well, and I think destruction time is the key bit as well. So if you're not grazing, spraying off plenty of time in advance, so spraying off in sort of December and early January, giving enough time for that cover crop to break down is pretty key. I think in the autumn, if you're using a short-term cover crop, there is an argument that if you've got a green cover there, that slugs will feed on that first rather than the crop that's got in the ground. I think slugs sometimes aren't always that fussy, and they'll go for the nearest thing, but we try and avoid having too big a mat if we can. I guess when we're drilling, that's the key bit. So we have seen some slugs, but not as bad as I would have expected.
Yeah, hi Russell, over here. Just wondering, will soil health continue to be your main focus, or are there other areas of your business you'll be looking to improve, with 2020 coming up?
I think soil health is always going to be there in the forefront of our minds, but I mean, you can't escape the possibility that the margins are going to get really quite tight. So we're looking very close at how it fits in their rotation. We've had to extend their rotation because of black grass, so sometimes not always the cash-rich crops. So we're looking very closely at what our fixed cost base is as well. Really, I think that's probably the hidden danger amongst all of it, is that if we've got a high fixed cost base going forward, then the soil health bit is insignificant in comparison. I don't know whether you got
well, going towards 2020, I've tried to rein back on my fixed costs, especially through benchmarking. One thing that everyone was talking about was the machinery depreciation and everything, so I've reined that back, but it's getting that true cost of production down is key, and the more we can do that by knowing what you're doing and where you're applying it and where you're spending it is going to be key. We've got to keep driving it down, and I challenge my agronomists to get our cost of production under £85 a tonne this year, and we're sort of hovering on about 92 at the moment, so we'll see what happens.
Hello Brian, I'll direct this one at you because I think Russell's had quite a few, but I'm afraid it's about pants again, but I know you're an expert. I'll just plug that I'm the Monitor Farm for Norfolk, and our open day is next Wednesday, where we'll be having live unveiling of my pants. And I am just a bit worried. A little bit of advice: I buried mine 8 weeks before, which was in April, and I did confess I had to wet my pants because I was worried about how dry it was. Do you think they'll be sufficiently broken down when I come to unveil them?
If you water them with a solution of nitrogen, they'll probably be completely shredded. What we found with our pants, I've done this, I think I'm into my 5th cycle in the same field, on 6 fields on my farm, and it's all been related to soil moisture, crop biomass on top of it, soil temperature throughout the whole year. So as soon as you got green cover on top of it, the soil biology was 10 times more active. And as soon as you get moisture and the right conditions, moisture, biomass and nutrition, your plants just completely shred. But where you switch off, and as soon as you disturb the soil, like turn the whole lot upside down and just totally invert it with the plough, you instantly stop everything, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get back to going. So I would hope that there should be some decomposition, depending on where and how you put them in. But it's a really interesting thing. It's something that I did, and it's quite interesting to get the Monitor Farm program into the sort of Twitter domain. And I've certainly learnt from it, but it's actually asking more questions than it is actually giving answers. But it's something that every single farmer can do. Any mum, dad can do it with their children, grandparents can do it with their grandchildren, and it's just educating everyone that soil is a living ecosystem, and we actually move the soil at its mercy. So I worked out that we actually moved 7.5 million tonnes of soil before I started moving to strip tillage and direct drilling. So when you start thinking how much that actually costs, my establishment costs have gone from £239 down to 103, just by moving less soil and doing it better in one pass. So yes, I hope that your plants will come up decomposed. Sorry I can't be there to see it and witness it, but hopefully someone's going to video it and put it on Twitter.
Thank you for that.
Brian, it's another one for you, I'm afraid. You're now measuring a lot, and you've spent your 20 quid on measuring it. What I want to know is, how are you going to, you're using those records to reduce your cost of production and increase your yield. Is it the work that you're doing with yen to increase yield, or is it the fact that you've got all this information and you're improving your average that is going to improve your bottom line?
Yes, it's two strains of thought, because do you spend more on your best bits and get your best bits pushing harder, or do you rein back and stop spending when you know your yield potential is low? And so I've done a bit of both. Yen looks at biomass and dry matter as key, whereas I'm actually looking at plant numbers and individually fields on a basis using that sort of theoretical idea. So I think it's a bit of both. I reined back on my low potential weeks this year because we're going through that dry spell, and I thought actually if I can cut back on my fungicide spend and really reduce my cost of production, then I'm going to be quids in when hopefully it does more than what it's actually predicting. If we get the right conditions of grain fill, if I get nice big bold berries, then it's going to weigh well. So yes and no, I'm going to try and push my best weeks harder and make sure the right nutrition is going on all the time. I'm looking at variable rate systems to make sure that the best bits are going to take more, but also by doing it for this year, it's my first year in doing it, if I then do it again next year, I know that I can then look back and say, well actually when I was establishing my crops last year, it was quite a dry, easy autumn to actually do work round our way, and so then I lost 25% of my plant population at establishment. Then if I get a wet drilling season, I know that my seed rates have to be a lot higher. So I'm already learning by being out there and getting that information. I can build up information on information. If you don't measure it, you can't change it.
Thank you for that, Brian. How are we getting on a bit, Roger?
Yeah, Brian and Russ. We in AHDB do our best to organise the yen as well as we can, and I mean we're overawed, to be honest, for your enthusiasm in following the benchmarks that we've created and so on. But the future ambition for the yen, and we've got people from Cambridge University here, and I'm sure other universities and research institutes, is that we connect your measurements, which are now all in a database that everybody can have a look at, with what happens in the research industry. And I'm just wondering whether you have any, because you've been taking these measurements, are there any questions that you just feel you're not getting answers to by taking the measurements?
The real burning question that the Yield Club have had this time round, when we've actually had our last set of biomass, we've all taken biomass weights, fresh weights, and then relayed them back to dry weights, and then got the tissue analysis of what's in the dry matter, and it's potassium K is the real question mark, because research says is it concentration of dry matter, but then other people are saying it's K in sap, so that's the real big question mark. And all of our results out of 12 farmers, if you look at using the 3.5% as the amount of K should be in dry matter, we're all very, very low, and we just can't seem to get enough into the plant for peak demand. So I think my fields personally were, I think they're about 130 kilos of K short at T2. So yeah, no, just before T3. So yeah, that's one question. I think seed rates, personally, I think I'm going to be pushing my seed rates higher. But that's just probably my establishment system with strip tillage and direct drilling might be a bit more higher losses. But the role of nutrition, boron, copper, all these little ones, I'm a great believer. I've been throwing it on, and our tissue analysis has shown that we're getting a higher concentration of copper and zinc early on because we're applying it early compared to everyone else. I've also applied boron, but what is the critical timing of boron? Should we be putting boron very early? Should we be putting boron late for flowering? So there's lots of question marks, and it's understanding the role of every single one and getting them in the right levels to hit peak demand, to make sure that some of the big boys in our yield club are saying that they're going to have 16.5 ton yield. Well, that'd be quite nice if we did that, but have we fed them enough? I don't think so. So yeah, it's an interesting thing but we only get that by communicating and talking between us, and then sitting around the table and saying, how can we change this for next year? And then hopefully the research people like yourselves will come in, help out. Yeah, and I enjoyed doing it last year. I got a lot from it, and that's what I'm doing too again this year. So yeah, I'd recommend people look at that for next year. But again, we need to get back out in the fields and really know what's going on and what levels things are needed and required when and how. And I think we've got to really rip out the rule book and start again to see what we can actually do.
Okay. Andrew?
Russ and Brian, you've both done your 3-year stint as being Monitor Farms now, so what would be your overwhelming benefit to your farming businesses coming out of the programme, and would you recommend it for someone else to do it?
It made sure I kept the farm side at least once a year. Would be the first one. It's been a good process. I think 3 years is about right. Gives you a chance to take a step back. I mean, you do sit up there, and you do open yourself up for criticism, which I don't think it's a bad thing sometimes. Really, it's like everything else, having another set of eyes cast over your business, and sometimes you don't always see the big picture when you look at it yourself. And it's quite nice when someone will challenge you with a question about, well, why do you do it that way? Have you thought about doing it, this way instead? And I think the discussion is the key bit. It's a very unique forum in the fact that farmers get around a table and they can sit there and they can discuss openly a topic of something they've been presented with, rather than having to sit through a day's worth of presentation and maybe only ask 2 questions or be shy of asking a question because of a big audience. So I think it's great for that. It gets a lot of talk and debate going. But I think if you're willing to open up your doors, and I think it's a good thing to do, I would recommend it, and I think it's a good process. And I think the important bit going forward, and it's the challenging bit, is to make sure that where we have got these good groups of people, that they keep going, I think, as well, because it's a really good network of farmers.
Yeah, hi. Glyphosate resistance across the world generally being caused by over-reliance on glyphosate and in combination with no tillage. It's quite frightening to think that we're probably trying to emulate this in the UK at the moment. Knowing that we've got no bromoxone and no other total herbicides, what are you doing to prevent glyphosate resistance?
I'll take that hand grenade and throw it a bit further that way. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to use it appropriately, using as many cultural controls as possible. I am relying on it. We all are, I think, in this country currently, especially if we're moving to direct drilling. But it all comes down to doing the right thing and using it properly. There's got to be the key. If you start having problems, then we've got to reassess our management of everything. Relating it back to a different subject on the farm, we do a lot of wildlife conservation, and as soon as the wildlife conservation comes into the farming area, I've got to reassess my management. And so if I start seeing glyphosate resistance or resistance to any chemistry, we've got to really look at what we're doing and ask questions of the research of the agronomists to actually make sure that what we are doing is the correct way of doing it to prevent complete everything blowing up in our face. So I think it's just being proper good farmers and using it correctly is what I'm challenged myself to be, is the farmer that does everything well and good and correctly to make sure that we're not having any problems like glyphosate resistancy. And lobby your MPs, lobby your MEPs, because they're the ones who are going to be making the decisions. And hopefully it's going to be, I haven't really kept it alive with the actual glyphosate debate lately. I've been a bit busy at home, on my hands and knees counting the plants. So I would just say to everyone, just use it properly. Same with slug pellets, formaldehyde, everything. If the general public get hold of it, we're up against it. So we've got to do our utmost to keep it as white can be.
Perhaps you should be up here on the stage, Ben, seeing as you're doing another report on glyphosate. But seriously, actually, well, it would be fascinating to read your report when it comes out later this year. But honestly, I think it's been a wake-up call for us generally, is that we need to be responsible with our usage. It's the most effective product we've had for a number of years, and still is. How we use it going forward is key. So I think we're restricting where we can the number of uses we use and when we use it, and the size of plants we're trying to deal with. And obviously everyone's talking about rotation, but we've looked a lot more closely at bringing grass in, and not just for a sort of 2-year term, but maybe for a bit longer as well. So trying to extend the number of uses and where we use it as well.
Brian, Russ, you're both real enthusiasts for what you're doing and you're monitoring. Brian, you said you'd taken 890 observations on your farm. I'm not quite sure what time period that is. Russ, you haven't buried quite as many underpants, but could you tell us a little bit about what you think is the right number of observations to be taking to make choices?
I actually did some on your field as well, so that's 4 more as well. So I think it's the more you do, the more you record, the more you can then ask questions, and you can have the data to ask the people who might give you the answers back. So if you put the right information in front of them, then we can all make an educated discussion about what's going on. But there's no right or wrong. I would say start with 1 field, start with 2 fields, compare those over a year, and then work up. I think I was a bit ambitious to do every single field, but I set my stall out and I've thoroughly enjoyed everything all the way through. My dogs have been pretty knackered because they've been walking them all with me. But there's no right or wrong way of doing it. Just make sure that you keep it the same way, the same methodology all the way through, and stick to your guns. Don't change it halfway, and then comparisons will come out and trends will start being resolved. We're seeing some great trends, some great results coming out of what we're doing with the Yield Club, what we're doing on my farm as well. You can start pulling out different variety trends. There's so much going on, which I took so much for granted before I started doing it. And now knowing what's going on has really opened my eyes to really pick out the areas which I need to challenge myself and my agronomists and my farm operatives to make sure that we're really hitting the points that we really need to. So I'd say start small and then see how far how you get on with it. But the more research, the more results, the better in my opinion.
I think it comes down to what information do you want to see. There's a lot of information overload with data you get from combines, yield maps, etc. I like hosting fungicide trials on farm, for example. We've got a good one this year. We've got varieties linked into it as well. It allows us to see the years when what is untreated on my farm in that year, and it helps me base my decisions knowing that we're going to get a payback. So we had last year, for example, the field yield within 10.5 tonne a hectare untreated was sub 7, so that allowed me to know that what we're doing on farm was paying back in terms of fungicide spend. Now obviously some years you're not going to get the return, but it gives you a degree of confidence that it's not just data that's being chucked up in front of you at a conference, that what's happening on farm is key. And I think Brian summed it up earlier when he was talking about your own knowledge is important, and I think that's why it's good to do. It does mean a bit of faff about doing split tramline trials with trace elements, fungicides or whatever, But how many times do you go around to an event when they will be talking about we're doing this program, that program, but they never actually share the results back with you? So it's great when you go and see stuff when they're trying different things, but if you don't know what the result of what they're trying to do is, then it's difficult to gauge what's happening. So I think it all comes down to with what stuff do you want to know, what results do you want to tease out, and ultimately what information you want to learn. Because obviously, variable costs are a big part of our business. How much do I need to spend on my fungicides? What varieties suit my farm? And those are just some of the basics really. You can overload, but I think it's the key bits that you want to learn yourself is the important side of it.
Okay, we've got time for one last question.
Great to hear about some of the innovative techniques you're using to monitor soil and crops. I was just wondering, are you either currently or looking at whether there's a link between the amount of holes there are in your underpants and what your yield is in different fields?
Yes and no. I don't think it's going to be an indicator of yield as per se, but with everything I've done, worm counts, pH, soil testing, soil temperature, and so the links then hopefully we'll be able to see again trends, but I don't think the underpants and that will relate directly to yield, because there's a lot of external sunshine, water. Water is the key. I think water is what was really showing the decomposition at peak times when you've got a real big biomass on top of it. So I'm just using it as an indicator, and I'm going to continue doing it. Probably not as many. And I think the AHDB missed out a trick because they should have had a set of sponsored white briefs or something to use throughout the whole Monitor Farm network. I'm sure they're coming next year. But hopefully we'll then start seeing trends again by seeing it. But again, it's a long way to go. It's only the first year I'm doing it.
Yeah, I'm not sure everyone wants to see Tim's trunks being sort of branded around the Monitor Farm programme somewhere. I'm purely looking at what condition our soil is in. If it's yielding better, great. We'll have an idea, hopefully, this harvest, is there any correlation, but I think it's just an indication to me that what we're trying to do with our soils is hopefully pushing us along the right lines. If we get yield benefits, great, but I'm not putting hopes on whether we'll see any difference. If we do, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, both. So we'll have a quick wrap up, but I just wanted to just emphasise the fact that this is free and open information. This is exactly how a Monitor Farm meeting would work. Open conversation, great questions, and it's thanks to all of you that you come here and you bring up great questions for Brian and Russ. I accept you're not going to go home with a solution, because the solution belongs with you, unique to your farm, and that's the very point of monitor farming. The other point we've discussed about here is the power of benchmarking, get your costs understood, and then take a long cold look that we've talked about all morning at your costs, and make tweaks to your business as you go forward. So without further ado, I'd like to thank both Russ and Brian in the normal way. If you could join me. To introduce Paul. Paul's the chair of AHDB Cereals and Oilseeds, and he's just going to wrap up with a few extra words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harry. It's just a matter of a few thanks. Thank you all for turning out. Fantastic turnout, and thank you too for all the work you've done in the past. If you follow them on Twitter, it's a constant source of amusement. And I want to thank everybody that's been involved in the Monitor Farm programme. It is a huge commitment. And it's a huge commitment with the regional team we've got out there as well. I love the attention to detail that gets drilled down to in these meetings, and I've been to a few of them. And they find practical solutions, and you are always aware that there is no simple, easy win out there. We're going to find the wins slowly and surely. I love the fact that there's some regional variations and differences and initiatives. You know, what works in Somerset won't work in Northumberland, but having a programme that works together means that we can learn from what's happening across the country. And we're really proud of the fact that we're also in Scotland, and we're going to have our first one in Northern Ireland in the future. So hopefully you'll have a chance to either get involved or go to the meetings, and also just take note of the fact that we're now doing Farm Bench across the country as well.